Ghost of Yotei is the next chapter in the Ghost Anthology series by Sucker Punch Productions, and the next installment faces the impossible challenge that every beloved franchise faces. How do you capture lightning in a bottle twice? Because let's be real, Ghost of Tsushima wasn't just a game, it was a moment, a true love letter to samurai films, a technical marvel on PlayStation 4, and now Ghost of Yotei is stepping into the arena filled with high expectations, legacy, and the shadow of its predecessor. With 3 months until the October release date and an official showcase happening this month, I'll be exploring that very problem and discussing how Ghost of Yotei plans to forge its own identity while building on the aspects that made Ghost of Tsushima so good. With the stakes higher than ever, can Ghost of Yotei rise above the shadow of its predecessor? To understand the challenge that Ghost of Yotei faces, we first have to revisit what made Ghost of Tsushima so great. In the first game, we followed Jin Sakai, a samurai torn between fighting honorably and following the samurai code or abandoning it using any means necessary to survive. Set against the backdrop of the first Mongol invasion of Japan, this game delivers a tale of honor and sacrifice that is truly unforgettable. Ghost of Tsushima stands out not just because of the beautiful samurai setting, but because of how it explores the cost of doing what's necessary to survive. Jin's journey from honorable warrior to the ghost isn't just about learning new skills. It's about letting go of what defined him and how doing the right thing isn't always possible, especially when the survival of you and your people is at stake. It shows how sticking to your values in a world that is crumbling around you isn't always practical. Every stealth assassination, every use of tools of deception like the kunai, smoke bombs, or poison is a choice that Jin makes, choosing results over his honor, which further adds to the emotional weight of the narrative. What makes Ghost of Tsushima so good is you actually feel the impact of the choices you make, not just during the gameplay, but even after the game is over. Like, I still think about my first playthrough of Ghost of Tsushima and how I approached certain objectives, my thought process behind those decisions, and of course the ultimate decision at the end of the game. Like, I still think about that stuff till this day. With Ghost of Yotei, they are taking a huge narrative leap, one that could elevate the experience or completely destroy what made the first game so special. Unlike the tightly structured story of the first game, Yotei will be a non-linear game, and from the sounds of it, players will be free to hunt down the Yotei 6 in any order we choose. But this could come at a cost. In other open world games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, non-linear progression works because the story kind of takes a back seat to exploration and discovery. You learn about the story not just by the narrative spelling it out to you, but as you explore the world, you learn about the story, you learn about where you are, what place you're at. But in a game like Ghost of Yotei, where the narrative is so crucial, the freedom of a non-linear story is a risky decision. A story that is fragmented could undercut the impact of the overarching narrative, making it feel disconnected or episodic. Similar to the memories in Breath of the Wild, which I believe aren't as effective with storytelling as linear storytelling. If players miss key story beats or tackle major events out of order, the emotional impact and overall pacing could suffer. For example, like seeing the full transition to the Onryo might not hit as hard. There's also the danger of a weak ending where defeating harder bosses in the Yotei 6 early could mean an anticlimactic finale. Like, imagine you go fight Khoten Khan in Ghost of Tsushima on the boat and you kill him before you go after everyone else. Obviously, these are just hypotheticals, but it just means that they will have to handle the non-linear progression delicately. You could lock out certain enemies from immediately eliminating them, similar to how Assassin's Creed Shadows works. But I think the simplest approach would be they'll probably make them like super powerful or nearly impossible to defeat early on. But again, that would risk making the game structurally similar to Ghost of Tsushima, which risks that same repetitiveness that Ghost of Tsushima is criticized for. Now, in my opinion, if Ghost of Yotei wants to be fully non-linear, then the game has to be adaptive and more dynamic than ever. Characters, specifically the Yotei 6, should evolve based on the player's previous actions. If one character falls early, the other characters might change their tactics or surrender or just straight up double down. In my opinion, if Yotei wants to succeed with its storytelling, they should take inspiration from Breath of the Wild and tell the story through world building. On the other hand, a game like Assassin's Creed Shadows that is strangely similar to Ghost of Yotei, which part of my criticism for that game is the structure of the story. Throughout my playthrough of Shadows, I reminded myself how much I missed linear Assassin's Creed games. So hopefully Sucker Punch Productions saw this this and found a middle ground where player freedom enhances the narrative rather than fragments it. But it wasn't just Ghost of Tsushima's story that made the game unforgettable, it was the gameplay. The combat system in Ghost of Tsushima was my favorite part of this game. Every mechanic was so polished. The combat itself felt precise and not like traditional open world games combat. You weren't just swinging a sword, hack and slashing at enemies. You actually dueled. Every combat stance in the game, water, wind, stone, and moon, wasn't to just look cool, they were specifically designed to counter different enemy types. Switching between stances in the middle of battle made the combat feel like a dance of life or death, especially on higher difficulty where understanding the game mechanics and timing is everything. When you weren't fighting with honor, the stealth gameplay let you become the ultimate assassin, the mix between precise and honorable fighting tactics. With the stealth-based ghost tactics is the heart of the gameplay, and that's exactly where Ghost of Yotei faces its biggest challenge. How do you evolve a combat system that already feels so refined? Well, let's dig a bit deeper. Ghost of Yotei takes place 300 years after the events of Ghost of Tsushima, so that will obviously be a major evolution in how the combat will work. The game takes place in the early Edo period in the region known as Ezo, also known as the modern-day Hokkaido, which is a place that is not fully integrated in Japan. Large-scale battles have for the most part dwindled, and in turn samurai focused on more personal duels. But now with a formalized Bushido code and a new and refined sword techniques, the Edo period saw the rise of schools like Niten Ichiro, pioneered by Miyamoto Musashi, that had a focus on dual-wielding katanas, which we know is confirmed for this game, so perhaps rather than stance switching like in Tsushima, they'll go with a more dynamic weapon-based approach. For instance, if you want to deal with a shielded enemy, switch your weapon to something that counters a shield. And the same goes for a brute as well as the other enemy types. Let's say there's an enemy at range, you could perhaps switch to your Naginata to attack someone in that moderate range. Or if you're dealing with multiple enemies, switch to a Kasarigama and use it as crowd control. Now, another major addition due to the time period shift is Ghost of Yotei will introduce new weapons like the Tanegashima rifle, which is a pretty drastic shift in combat mechanics. So in the same line of thinking of a stanceless approach, Atsu could use the rifle to deal with battles where there are multiple enemies to take down. Now in Ghost of Yotei, it's believed that stealth will be a core mechanic like in its predecessor, but I believe that that will be elevated by Atsu's embodiment of the Onryo, who in Japanese folklore is a vengeful spirit and a wrathful ghost from a wronged woman who returns to bring terror, fear, and retribution on her enemies. This Onryo archetype is perfectly aligned with how we know the narrative is described. Atsu embarks on a revenge quest to hunt down the outlaws known as the Yotei Six, who are responsible for the death of her family. So with that knowledge in mind, we can assume that she will use fear tactics that likely expand upon Ghost of Tsushima's ghost stance. So perhaps we will see a Onryo stance. Now in the previous game, Jin Sakai instilled fear through his enemies through kills and assassinations. For Atsu, this could involve her leaving markings throughout a point of interest, perhaps placing a sash with targets crossed out with another target that's not crossed out. For instance, she's hunting down one of the Yotei Six at a specific location, and as she investigates the area and kills enemies, she might leave markings deliberately for people to see, causing enemies to panic or leave as rumors of the Onryo spread. This game definitely seems to up the mystical factor, and by that I mean people who genuinely believe in the Onryo and are terrified of it. Additionally, Atsu has a wolf companion who the Ainu people believe are the divine protectors, with Atsu having the ability to possibly control the wolf that could play a pivotal role in the stealth, assisting Atsu with distracting enemies, scouting areas out, or even silently attacking enemies for Atsu to deal the final blow. Another thing to consider is the environments. With blizzards in the mountainous region, I can see this helping with stealth due to the low visibility for ambushes. One scenario I can see happening is Atsu using a snowstorm to her advantage. She approaches a group of people, silently takes down one of the targets, leaves behind something, and then vanishes into the blizzard. The other enemies see what was left behind, get freaked out, and then run away in fear. Evolving these stealth components won't be a super challenging task for Sucker Punch, given the success in balancing Jin's ghost and samurai playstyles. However, they have to strike a careful balance between Atsu's stealth-driven Onryo persona and the more aggressive guns-blazing approach. My fear is that overemphasizing the stealth component could overshadow direct confrontations, and created an almost one-dimensional approach to completing objectives. But with how they were able to balance out Ghost of Tsushima, I'm sure that won't be much of a problem despite my initial concerns. I would say out of everything, this is one of the aspects I'm hoping we learn more about during the state of play later this month. One of the defining aspects of Ghost of Tsushima was its breathtaking open world. It truly felt like walking in a painting, but it wasn't just beautiful, it was immersive. But beneath the visuals, the actual traversal was fairly limited, with horseback riding being the only method of getting from place to place. It worked for Ghost of Tsushima because the game was more about absorbing the atmosphere and following the guiding wind, but with Yotei stepping into a new region known for its mountainous terrain, deep snow, and untamed wilderness filled with wildlife, this obviously raises an important question and concern: will horseback travel alone be enough? And furthermore, with the focus on verticality, is that even viable? Could we see a more shift to dynamic movement options like climbing gear and sledding? Or will there be just a lot more walking in this game compared to the last? Traversing the world should be a part of the gameplay loop. This is another aspect of the state of play I hope they focus on. Without evolutions to traversal, for example, keeping the limited grappling hook to specific points in the world just sounds like kind of a disaster, especially if you have to scale a mountain. Having a grappling hook that is dynamic, giving you the freedom to scale vertically wherever you want, is a must-have feature. I think the big challenge will be to ensure that Ghost of Yotei captures the same immersive magic as Tsushima, because if the world feels static and traversal becomes repetitive and feel like a chore, even the most beautiful landscapes can start to feel lifeless. It's easy to look at Ghost of Yotei and worry about the game not living up to the expectations we all have. The non-linear structure could break the narrative flow, the shift in combat could alienate some fans of the simplistic stance system, and the mystical elements might feel out of place if not done correctly. And even the beautiful visuals of Ezo that we've seen in various marketing trailers could fall flat if they don't deliver a similar experience that Ghost of Tsushima did. Now, while all of these concerns are valid, as I've mentioned, they're not insurmountable. In fact, I think they all open a door for innovation if done correctly. I think the biggest narrative hurdle is the non-linear storytelling, which I believe is the biggest problem that this game could have. The big risk here is pacing, but the solution is adaptive storytelling, making the world and characters respond depending on the order in which you progress. Think about how Red Dead Redemption 2 reacts to your choices, which is a massive task, but I believe that Sucker Punch can do it. So yeah, Ghost of Yotei does have problems to solve, but every one of those problems is an opportunity to build something fresh, which if you've played Sucker Punch Productions games before, you know that they are perfectly equipped to create something truly meaningful. I mean, if we're being real here, Sucker Punch has already proven that they could take a genre we thought we knew and breathe so much new life into it. Needless to say, I am really excited for the Ghost of Yotei state of play to see more of the vision the team has created for this game, and I truly believe that with the right design choices and respecting what made Ghost of Tsushima a masterpiece, Ghost of Yotei doesn't have to live in the shadow of its predecessor, it can cast an entirely new shadow. October can't come soon enough. Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed my coverage of Ghost of Yotei and you want to hear me talk about video games more, do me a favor, hit the like button. If you enjoyed this content, subscribe to the channel with your noties on to get more content like this. And until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.